Hello, dear friends, and Happy New Year. I'm excited to begin a series in my weekly online programming called I Love to Tell the Story, It's All About the Hymns, in which we will focus on some of the brightest and best lights within our church and within our community. I had hoped to start this series last fall, but the demands of weekly online worship really kept me from doing with this program what I wanted to do. And then after the new year, I was inspired during the season of Epiphany, the season of lights. And the Lord said, "Why don't you do this series now?" And so I thought, okay, I will heed your word. And so this week, we start what I'm calling the Epiphany series of lights, reflecting upon some of the brightest lights of our congregation and our community. And today, we will focus on my dear friend and colleague, Sandra Ford. This series began really with her interview last fall in her beautiful home at King's Grant. And then Jake and I sang a new piece of music which she had written for her grandson entitled An Irish Blessing. So today, this series begins with you, Sandra, and we revisit that interview and then sing this wonderful piece of music for you that I know will melt your hearts. Then in the weeks remaining in Epiphany and as we head into Lent, I will do interviews with 4 people who I have come to know and dearly love in this congregation. The first is Laura Elkins, who is the director of our Early Learning Center. The second interview will be with one of our spiritual matriarchs, Marion Myers. The third interview will be with the former minister of music and my dear friend, Byron Corky Corcoran. And finally, I will spend some time with Linda Adams, who leads our incredible mission ministries of First Church and is the head of our missions committee. I hope to expand this series throughout the year and interview many of you within our congregation and in the community so that we can all be encouraged by these testimonies and journeys of faith, so that we can seek an even deeper relationship with the Lord. With each one of these interviews, we will end with the favorite hymn of the person that I'm interviewing, so that we can then share in our hearts the message of Christ and His love through a hymn that is their favorite. So truly, as this new year begins, I hope this series, this Epiphany series of light, will warm your hearts, will encourage you in your faith, and will remind us all what a beautiful gift is friendship and Christian fellowship with one another. Before Sandra Ford's interview today, I leave you with these 2 verses from the first chapter of James, which really gave me the basis for this series. Every generous act of giving, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. In fulfillment of His own purpose, He gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we would become a kind of first fruits of His creation. So as we focus on so many of you in the weeks ahead, again, I hope that the generous spirits by which we live at First Church and the gifts of our testimony will encourage you as we reflect upon these folks and then their favorite hymns. As I said, Happy New Year, and I do look forward to seeing all of you at First Church soon, and I hope you will receive a blessing through this series. Hello, boys and girls. I'm in Martinsville today. Auntie Jill is in the wonderful neighborhood here in Martinsville. And I am with a very dear friend and colleague who I've gotten to know while working at First Church. And many of you may know her already, but let us welcome to Auntie Jill's neighborhood the wonderful and marvelous Sandra Ford.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, that's great. Yes, many of you may know Sandra, but I got to know Sandra a couple of years ago because she is a wonderful composer. And she most recently, what I call her latest and greatest, she wrote a beautiful dedicatory anthem to Corky Corcoran's ministry at First Church, his 26 years of music ministry at First Church. And luckily, we were talking about this yesterday, luckily we were able to do that anthem on February the 9th, which meant that was before the coronavirus hit the American shores. So what a blessing. We were both commenting on how wonderful that was to be able to do that together. So I just, in getting to know her and her wonderful talents and her sweet, beautiful spirit, I thought, what a great thing to interview Auntie Sandra for Auntie Jill's neighborhood. So I'm delighted for her to be with us today.
I think that's really should be Grandma Sandra. That's what I am to my grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Well, there we go, Grandma Sandra. That's awesome. Yes, well, let's get started. I've got some handy-dandy little questions here that I'm going to ask her, and I know we're going to have a wonderful time. So, Grandma Sandra, what is your full name?
Well, my name was Sandra Allison Turner, and then I was married and became Sandra Allison Turner Ford.
Awesome. And how many years were you married?
We were married 61 years.
Are you serious?
Yes.
61
Yes.
years. Oh my word. What an accomplishment that is. Isn't that, kids? That's fantastic. And what was your husband's name?
My husband's name was Jim, and he was an attorney. He was from Martinsville, and when we finished law school, or when he finished law school, I taught school while he was going to law school. We came back to Martinsville to live here, and lived here from 1959 until he passed away 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Wow.
Almost 3 now. Yes.
So he was from Martinsville.
Yes.
And then you met while you both were in law school?
No, we were in Roanoke College. And I was in Roanoke College because I had a horse, and I couldn't go away to college. My dad said he would not send a horse to college. So I changed my direction and went to Roanoke College so I could stay home and train my horse, a new horse that I had just bought. And I met Jim when I was at Roanoke College.
That's an amazing story that you wanted to stay close to your horse. That's awesome. Yes, and so were you doing an education major there?
No, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. We lived in the country, and we had many animals, and I had my horses, and I decided that I wanted to be a veterinarian. I loved animals so I went into pre-med, and I was in the pre-med course for at least 2 years, and realized that it was not going to be for me. I was not big enough to handle the farm animals that I would have had to handle in those days. And women were not well accepted in veterinary school. Then there was not but one school. that I could have gone to here in the South. That would have been in Georgia. And I decided I loved teaching. I knew I loved being with children, so I decided to go into education and psychology then.
So you did 2 years in med and then changed over
Yes,
to education and psychology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Jim was there doing a law degree.
Well, no, he was in pre-law at
Pre-law.
that time. Yes, he was probably a history major.
I
that
gotcha.
time. Yeah, he was.
Amazing. But you both met at Roanoke College. So you were saying he was from Martinsville.
Mm-hmm.
So were you also from Martinsville?
No, I was from Roanoke, and then later Roanoke County, and my mother's people were all from far southwest Virginia. So we sort of have mountain roots, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Absolutely.
I didn't think I wanted to come to Martinsville because I wanted to go to a big city. But when we came, I just fell in love with it, and I've been in love with it ever since.
Oh, that's amazing. That's beautiful. And so you and Jim then were both from Virginia, just different parts.
Yes.
And you met at that school.
Right.
And so then I don't know if I knew that you wanted to be a veterinarian. I've had 2 other friends in my life who were thinking that they wanted to be vets. And interestingly, my one dear friend ended up leaving the veterinary school because he needed to go home. Like when you talk about those family roots, he left school because his father got ill, and he had to go home and take care of him. But he went since and got a law degree himself. So it's amazing the paths we take, right?
It does.
That's
Life takes us in many directions.
Yes, it does. And that's why it's always an adventure.
Right.
Because sometimes I know even for myself, we get an idea and we think that that's what we're supposed to do in our lives, and then something comes along and you find yourself in Martinsville. Isn't that great, kids? Well, this is great. Well, it's so interesting then, before we get more into Jim, when you were growing up, did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one brother who was older than I was.
Oh, you're the baby.
I'm the baby of the family. In fact, I was the baby of the family, the youngest grandchild on both, all the way through, and all the families, and which was a kind of a nice thing. My aunts and uncles were more like grandparents to me because I never knew my grandparents. They passed away, except for one, and she lived until I was 4, and I do remember her vaguely.
Oh, wow.
But my aunts and uncles were grandparents to me, and they were wonderful grandparents. They really were. And one uncle was the one who fostered the interest in horses, and he gave me my very first horse, and her name was Star. And she was a wonderful horse. She really was. I was able to teach her tricks, and she was loving and sweet and dear, and I have fond memories of her.
Oh, that's beautiful. How many years did she live?
Well, she lived to be a very old horse. I gave her back to my uncle later because I bought 1 or 2 new horses.
Yeah.
And we were running out of room for pasture. So I gave her back. So she lived to be quite old. The last horse I had I bought as a colt, and she was the one I had when I came to Roanoke College. And she lived to be 32 years old.
Wow.
And she ended up in Henry County. And she won an award in the horse show here. So I was proud of her.
And what was her name?
Her name was Edith HYMNS. And we called her Edie.
Edie!
She was registered, and she was a show horse. And was a
beautiful.
lovely horse.
So you had Star and Edie and
I had Kama.
And
then I had Queenie, who I really was not actually my horse, but I kept her and trained her for an elderly friend of mine.
Wow.
She was deathly afraid of men, and she would not allow him to even go in a stall with her. She had been mistreated by men, and I could handle her, and she was very gentle with me, and I rode and showed her for him. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
Kids, I never knew this about Grandma Sandra. That is so awesome. So are you able even now? Are there horses that you can go and continue your love for?
I wish, but I have arthritis now, and 4 years ago I was hit with something called uh, it's a collapse of the spine, really, and it's changed all the things I love to do. I'm not able to do right now, so
Yes.
I just have to live on my memories that I had of all the fun I had.
Oh,
with
and I
growing
often
up with these horses.
exactly. I have that too. I often call it the blessing of a memory, because memories can truly be a blessing, and our imaginations and our hearts can almost transplant us back in time to those things that we loved. That's also why I love to read.
Well, I still ride in my memories.
That's right.
I still can feel like I could ride if I could get up on the horse. So.
Yes, and look at this little beautiful girl that's come to see us. Who is this, Grandma Sandra?
That is Champagne.
Champagne! Aren't you
Champagne.
gorgeous? I know you're like, I want to be with
She's
you.
not being very nice.
No, that's
She-
okay, but isn't she
really
beautiful?
loves folks. She was a rescue animal. She'd been mistreated, and we got her from the SPCA.
Oh,
and she's
wonderful.
now 15 years old.
You are gorgeous.
She's been a wonderful buddy to both of us.
Oh,
And
yes.
she sleeps with me at night, but don't tell anybody.
I know. Our Bear and Frida sleep with me and my husband too. I don't think I could sleep without them now.
No,
Right?
It's comfort.
It's comforting. That's exactly right. Well, that's amazing. And what was your brother's name?
My brother's name was Kelly.
Kelly.
Yes.
And he was your older brother.
He was my older brother, and he was in the Second World War.
Wow.
And we
Wow.
were all very concerned and worried, but all during that terrible time. But he came home safely, and went to UVA and became a geologist, a geophysicist, and he hunted for oil, and that was his. So he lived in Texas.
There you go. Because, yes. Well, and I think that's something to remember too. That's why I love getting to know and interviewing people who have had experiences on the earth in times just as difficult as what we're going through right now. And I know that I have some friends of mine and older people in my life who talk about what it was like growing up in the war. My family, my dad's side of the family, they had to move to Norfolk. Interestingly, they lived in north of Winston-Salem, but there was a group of them that moved to Norfolk because during the war, that was where you could find work.
Shipbuilding.
Shipbuilding.
Yes.
Yeah, and so they all lived in a house together, and as they say, they did what they had to do. And I'm encouraged by that when I hear stories like that, because it just reminds me that even though we're going through difficult times during these Corona days, many people have been through difficult times before, and so you can be encouraged that we're going to get to the other side of this, even though we have to go through a lot right now.
That's right.
So remember that. Well, that's awesome. So then tell me about your husband. I asked her how long you were married, and that was 61 years. That's truly a miracle. But tell me a little bit about Jim. So he was a lawyer.
Jim was a lawyer, but he would have loved to have been an engineer. And he was very good at building skills. And together we built a house at Smith Mountain Lake. He did most of the building, I did the finishing. And we had a lot of fun doing that together. He was very good at what he did. He could plan and draw and execute a plan easily, and
Like an architect.
He was a secret architect.
That's beautiful. And so did you live in that home the majority of your life?
No, this was a vacation home.
Oh,
that
wonderful.
We lived in Martinsville, and we would go there on weekends, and the children would come to visit, and we had fun with it.
I know. I look forward to getting to Smith Mountain Lake before it's all over with, because many people here have told me how beautiful that is.
Very.
And I know a lot of people within our congregations have places there. I know Rebecca Crabtree shared on Facebook one day of them going to drive up worship in their boats.
Yes, you could go to worship in your boat, and then we could go out on the water, and then the children loved to water ski. I was not very good at it. I'm just being perfectly honest, but I love to swim, so I love to be on the water.
Oh, that's wonderful. Did you and Jim have children?
We had 2 children. We had a boy and a girl, and each of them has a boy and a girl, and one boy has 2 more little girls, so I'm a great grandmother.
Oh, that's amazing!
Right.
So you had a son and daughter. What were their names?
Martin was their son. He's named for General Joseph Martin because he is a 5th direct descendant of General Joseph Martin.
Oh, wow.
And our daughter is Margaret, named after her grandmother.
Oh, beautiful. And then they each have a boy and a girl.
They each have a boy and a girl.
And then, is it Martin's son then that has the 2 great-grandchildren?
Yes, his oldest. And then he has a daughter named Sandra. Isn't that fun?
That is fun.
Named for Grandma Sandra.
That's right. Oh, that's lovely. So again, the blessing of a beautiful family, isn't it?
Yes.
And do they live near you here, or have they dispersed all over the world?
They're scattered.
Yeah.
They're scattered. One family, Margaret and her family, live in Falls Church, right outside of Washington, D.C., and our son and his wife live in Augusta, Georgia, where they have the golf tournament every year. So,
oh, I know, the Masters.
yes.
I'm trying to grow azaleas as big as those at Augusta right now.
They're beautiful.
They are beautiful. I've always loved those huge azaleas down there. It's amazing. That's awesome. Well, then, you said, let's go back to this, because I think of you as the grand jewel of Martinsville in your composition. That's how I got to know you, and so many people speak of that talent and how you've blessed not only adults but children through your music. But clearly, before you really discovered and built your composing talents, you were a teacher.
Yes. I taught grade school. I taught 3rd grade.
Where?
In Charlottesville, Virginia, while Jim was in law school. And then when we came back here, we had a baby by that time, little Margaret. And then we had another baby. And when they were a little bit older, I went to work I did substitute work all the time they were growing up. And then I went to First Presbyterian Church and became a teacher of 5-year-olds. We had a 5-year program then. And then later became the director as well. And I loved it. I was there for a number of years. And that was a lot of fun. I loved teaching. That was a favorite thing to do.
Oh, that's amazing. And children, clear.
Yes,
oh, I mean, even myself, my inner child just radiates to you because of that beautiful spirit that you have. So then how did you get started as a composer?
Well, that's an unusual story, and I don't understand it even myself. I loved music, and my mother and daddy saw to it, even with the horses, that I took 12 years of piano. I feel very sorry for my piano teacher. She was an angel, and she had to be to put up with me because my mind was on the horses all the time, and I didn't like to practice. But I stuck with it, and I had a close friend who lived here in Martinsville and used to be our choir director and organist at First Presbyterian Church. She and I have been friends for over 75 years. Wow. And she still lives here. She has moved back to Martinsville. Her name is Jane Townsend, and some people will remember her and know her. Anyway, we both took from this organist, and we've kept this friendship up all these years. I loved music. I was in church choirs, but it was not something that I felt that I was going to do with my life. But when I was 56 years old in 1986, I came home one day after teaching. I had not been playing the piano except to play by ear with my children in kindergarten, but I could not pass the piano. There was something that said to me, you must write. I'd never written in my life. I'd never wanted to write, never thought I could, never even considered it. So I went to the piano and I wrote an anthem. I wrote the text, but I didn't know how to write it down. I just remembered it in my head. It was not a very nice anthem. It's not a very good anthem, but I thought it was kind of remarkable because I'd never done it before. And I took it over to Jane Townsend and showed it to her, and she was being a good friend. She didn't say, it's really terrible, Sandra. She said, well, that's interesting, Sandra. Maybe you'll do it again. She doesn't even remember this. I do. I thought, I'll never do that again, though. But in about 2 weeks, the same thing happened. I had to go to the piano. This time, I wrote an anthem that later was published, but not at that time. And Jane was really encouraging then. She even had the choir do it. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they read it when I realized, because I didn't know how to write. So I thought, well, I will teach myself to write. I got a book, and I studied, and I studied, and I worked, but I realized I still was not doing very well. So that summer, Jane encouraged me to go to Westminster Choir College in Princeton, New Jersey, and study under a lady called Alice Parker. Now, Alice is a wonderful hymnologist, and she's got a worldwide following.
Mm-hmm.
And but the little brochure said you didn't have to be a good musician to go. You could just go and be a part of the group, and you would learn. And Jane said that was just for me. So I flew to Princeton and spent the week under Alice Parker's tutelage, and I learned one thing. I learned I didn't know anything about writing. I was writing down everything Alice said phonetically because I didn't know the language. I simply was unknowledgeable. And I came home. I had already stopped teaching at that point because I wanted to write so badly. And I said, Jim, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to go back to school. And he said, that's good. He said, just call all the colleges that you could drive to within an hour or an hour and a half and see what they can offer. So I did. And Roanoke College offered me exactly what I needed. So I immediately went back to Roanoke College that fall, and I ended up going for another 3 years and getting the courses and things I needed. Professors took me under their wings. They became close friends. Other people stepped up, and I had friendships I never knew about. And I learned so much in those 3 years, and it has stayed with me. And after that, I began to be published because I had some background that I had not had before. One of the other things I had is I learned to use the computer to write with, and that was the biggest help I can ever imagine, because I can't imagine doing without it. It was the programs were in their infancy then.
Wow. Was this Finale?
No, Finale only was for a Macintosh, and we had only IBM computers because they had to correlate with the computers at the office.
I see.
And everything was IBM. There was a program written by a professor at Radford College, and he wrote it only for PCs. And we used that. It was a very difficult program because it didn't have any helps at all. But it did the job, and I learned it and put it on my computer. And then later went with Finale when Finale had a program for PCs.
Isn't that amazing? So what I find interesting about that too is that you started at Roanoke College to be a veterinarian, which then transformed into being an education psychology major, right?
Right.
And then, lo and behold, in her late 50s, what happens? But the Lord sends her back to Roanoke College, and she was studying music.
Right.
So you are a lifelong learner.
I love to go to school. I will say that. As long as someone will send me to school, I will go. I love to go to school.
And I love that. I think what's so beautiful about that, kids, is never, never, never stop learning. Don't think in any way, shape, or form that your life, once you get out of high school or should you go to college, you know, I have many friends who didn't go to college. They went on their own paths to become entrepreneurs or something that started businesses. But the real thing is that allow your imaginations and your minds and your creativity to constantly stay alive, because this is such a beautiful example of someone who's, through her lifelong love of learning, look at all she's given to this community by developing her gifts in that way. And that's what it's all about. It's about developing your gifts and sharing them with the world. So I loved that story, and I love the fact that it was at a later point in your life also where it was like the Spirit was talking to you in a way that made her, when she walked by the piano, feel that tug to go over there and start writing something.
And it really was a tug. The first year, I couldn't stop writing. It was a push that I had every moment. I love doing text as well as writing music. So I had, if I weren't writing the music, I was writing text. I carried a notebook with me everywhere I went. If an idea came to me, I wrote it down immediately. It was an exciting time for me, but it was a little bit scary because I'd never encountered anything that put me in that direction. But I do think that the Holy Spirit was working, and I was not ready to receive it until I was 56 years old. So I think we don't know what life has in store for us, and it can be some very exciting things all during our life. And I'm now 86, and I still have exciting things that I do, and I never know what the day is going to bring. So that's something to look forward to.
Yes, that's a wonderful way to live. It is a wonderful way to live. And you know, I've said this before, maybe not in some of my interviews, but I started taking piano lessons when I was 5. My mother said I came out of her womb into the world doing music. She said, I can remember sitting there going, she's going to do music, Danny. That was my dad. And I did. I started taking piano lessons when I was 5, and it was like that was something that it's just like it was in me to do, right? And to be able to find something like that in your life that brings you that much joy is so important. This is why I don't have to take pills or take drugs, because that's my joy. It just lights up my world, and I want more and more of you to be able to find this for your life, because it brings so much happiness and personal happiness, doesn't it?
It really does.
It really does. Isn't this amazing? Wow. Well, to that point, was there any other career pursuits in your life, or anything else that you wish you had studied, or is there something else now that you were thinking about delving into?
Well, before music came into my life, I loved to paint. I worked in acrylics, and I worked in oils, and I worked in pastels. I did work and sold some of my work. Then I got into pottery. I loved working with pottery. I did wheel-thrown pottery, and I did hand-built pottery. And then I got into working with jewelry, small items of pottery, and had a small business going.
Wow.
But with some health issues came in to the scene, and I had to stop some of that. I love it. But the nice thing about art in any form, the graphic arts and music are very much alike. We even use some of the same terminology. There's light and there's dark. My friends that paint, we love to talk together because we talk the same language. And I've often thought that it's part of it's one side of the same coin. If you turn it over, it's music or it's art. But the two go very closely together and they're intertwined.
Oh, yes.
And so I love that. I've sort of run out of classes to take. I've taken quite a few. Whenever I see a class that I'm interested in, I just take the class.
Yes.
So it's fun.
That's exactly right. It is fun. It keeps you alive. It keeps you it keeps you young at heart, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Well, let me ask you personally about your life as a Christian. Was there a specific time when you gave your heart to Christ? Or has it been more of what I call a journey or a process?
I think it's really been more of a journey. My parents were my role models. My brother often said, if I could pick the parents, home I could be born into, it would be this home. They were very unusual people. I know now that they were dedicated Christians, but they lived that life, and I never heard an unkindness or a voice raised or a judgmental talk from them. They both taught Sunday school, and they felt it very important that I be grounded in the Bible. And I had to memorize.
Yes.
Memorize so much, even with the catechism, the shorter catechism. I can still say, God is a spirit, infinite, eternal, and unchangeable in his being, wisdom, power, holiness, justice, goodness, and truth. So every now and then I rely on my memory. It's not as good as it was, but Saturdays were given over to getting ready for church. And you had to get your clothes ready, your shoes shined, and you had to study your Sunday school lesson and be ready to go. So sometimes I rebelled against that. Sometimes I got very tired of that. But I always saw Mother and Daddy as real role models because they lived their Christian faith every single day. My faith went through lots of different stages, and it's still going through stages.
Yes.
But I'm finding that the Holy Spirit works through people. And as I go through life, I have been touched by so many wonderful people. Sometimes they were perfect strangers.
Yes.
And they said the right thing, or they did the right thing at the right time that I needed it. And I just feel that Holy Spirit working in that way more than any other way. No, there has not been a mountaintop experience, but there have been little experiences all through my life, and I continue to have them.
Yes.
Things I cannot explain other than the Holy Spirit working in my life.
Yes, and you know, I've had this conversation with Lily and Guy too, who I think the world of as well, and she's, you know, a pastor, and we were talking after one of our committee meetings about the fact that we have the Trinity in our Christian faith, the Father, the Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost. And, you know, at different times in my life, what those aspects of that Trinity have really spoken to me. And I am very close now in my relationship to the person of Jesus in my devotional time, in my study, because I know he walked this earth, and I know he had these trials and tribulations. And so there's often times where I'm encouraged in reflecting upon the Savior of Jesus. But what Lil Guy and I both said, to your point, the part of the Trinity that we really love is the Spirit, right? Because the Spirit is with us now. The Spirit, like God and Jesus are with us too, but the Spirit can show itself in so many ways, through, like what you were saying, even through people who could be strangers to you. And I sometimes say about them, when I meet them and they'll do something for me, or they'll help me with something, I'll look at them and I'll say, you are my angel today. Because God works in that way. And I love that faith testimony that you gave in that sense, because we need to constantly be growing in our faith, you know. And I know a lot of people get discouraged or they feel like they've fallen out of it, but it only takes that spark to really get it renewed again. And I think for me, it feeds my heart and my soul and my whole being to feel that in my life,
And we never know when we're going to be the spark that makes a difference for someone else.
Yes.
We're God's hands and feet.
Yes.
And we never know when we're going to say the right word or do the right thing that can make a difference in someone else's life. It has made a difference in my life when I've been touched by these friends or these people that are sometimes perfect strangers.
Yes.
That have made a difference in my life.
That's beautiful. I can see, I feel that. I feel you, as we say. That's so great. Well, now gets to be the fun part about this. So what is your favorite colors, Grandma Sandra?
Well, they're really kind of two colors together. I love greens and blues and all those shades in between. They're sort of outdoors colors.
Yes.
That the colors of water and the beach and the ocean and yet the green trees. I love outdoor colors.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. And green's my favorite color too. I love it. I was going to ask you about pets, but we've already met Champagne, right?
Champagne.
Beautiful. Yes. Rescue too, I know. We love to rescue animals.
Yes.
I often remind myself that the animals were here first, before God made humans, right? So it's a privilege to live with animals. And then with your love of horses too, that's fascinating. That's awesome. Well, what is your favorite kind of music?
I love all kinds of music, but I love Renaissance music.
Thus the lute?
Yes, but my favorite music is also Appalachian folk music.
Oh, lovely.
I think that maybe I have some sort of background, my Scotch-Irish ancestors and my Irish ancestors, and growing up in Southwest Virginia, I think perhaps that was the beginning. But I love Appalachian folk music, and it colors the way I write. It colors melody for me.
I just had that aha moment. Yes, that totally makes sense in the music that I have done of yours with the choir at First Church. Yeah, I totally get that. And that's what you were saying earlier. That just comes from those roots of being grounded in that mountain, Appalachian, rural, country upbringing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love the old shape note hymns.
Yes.
And, just the sounds, the pentatonic scale, those 5-note scales that we draw from. I just love that sound.
Mm-hmm.
That
high lonesome sound.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, and so then you studied the piano, but do you play any other musical instruments?
I don't anymore, but I did play guitar, and I have also a dulcimer. I played quite a bit and gave programs with it, and my daughter and my son and I used to give programs together when they were growing up, and that was a lot of fun.
On dulcimer?
Dulcimer, and they played dulcimer and guitar too. And
beautiful.
My son would play recorder, and gracious.
That's King's Grant checking on us up here.
Right.
They need to know that we're doing okay. Well, what are your other hobbies now?
Well, I do knitting and crocheting. I love to sew. I don't sew as much as I used to do. I used to make all of my clothes and all of my children's clothes.
Wow.
I even made coats for my husband. I don't sew much anymore, but I do love crocheting and knitting. I'm in a prayer shawl ministry.
Beautiful.
I would probably come back to painting, and I have arthritis, so that's bothering my hands some, so I don't do that as much. I used to be a runner. I can't do that anymore. I used to be a walker, and I'm not able to do that anymore. So some of the things that I love to do, I'm no longer able to do, but I love to read, and that is
That's gonna be my
something
next
I
question.
do. And I have discovered Audible, and oh, do I love Audible! All my money is going to Audible here lately, and it's so much fun.
Well, I think that's so cute because what I also love about Grandma Sandra through this interview is that it's been clear that you've also always had a tech savvy side of you, that you learned how to use the personal computer, right? And do you still have a PC, or have you moved into the Mac world?
I have a PC,
Yeah.
and I have my piano is MIDI. It's an electronic piano MIDI through my PC
Awesome.
that I use for my writing, and I love computer. I really enjoy my computer. I took a number of computer classes earlier on, but I have a lot of fun with that. I have a Kindle that I use for my books,
Yes.
and I have an iPad, and I also have a Roomba, which I love. My Roomba does my vacuuming for me.
That's awesome. You were one hit grandma.
My grandchildren help me out with this.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Long distance.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Well, before I talk about the piece today, too, that we're going to be featuring, the latest and greatest of Grandma Sandra, what words of wisdom would you give to young people now, given the world that we inhabit?
Well, this is difficult because I know most young people don't want to listen at this particular point. I didn't at that age. I would say put down your cell phone for a while and talk to people face to face and see their expressions and listen to what they have to say. I think we're losing the ability to communicate with one another, and it's a very important ability. We tend to use text, and I use text a lot. I really do. I use it every day, and I enjoy my cell phone. But these important things that we do with other people, we need to be able to see their faces and talk to them personally. And I think we need to put that cell phone down for short times, at least, to get to know the folks around us.
Yeah, that's so beautiful to be able to connect. Yeah, and we can do that now, even during a pandemic. You know, I think a lot of people, this whole situation has made a lot of people feel very removed from themselves. And that's where sometimes technology can help us. Like, I'm able to see my niece and my sister in Baltimore because we can FaceTime together. But it's so important for us to remember that these are real live human beings that we are wanting to connect with, and that when we can get off in our minds into our technology, even though it's a fabulous thing, as you were saying,
Yes.
Nothing can really take the place of that direct kind of connection.
Yeah.
That's absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's why today on this hymn segment, I am featuring, I'm sort of doing a combined Auntie Jill's neighborhood interview with Grandma Sandra, but it's also because she has written a beautiful piece based on the Irish proverb or the Irish prayer of, may the road rise to meet you, may the wind be ever at your back. And Jake and I are getting ready to sing that for you right now in honor of her latest and greatest. But I think this is also to her testament about connecting. I want her to just tell you why she wrote this piece. And sometimes even a gift of music or singing a song or doing what she's getting ready to tell you about can also touch someone's heart so deeply. So tell us why you wrote this beautiful piece.
Well, our pastor uses this at the end of every service. And
At First Presbyterian.
At First Presbyterian, and I've always loved it. But being here at Kings Grant, we really can't leave. We've been on sort of a lockdown for a good while. We're getting out a little bit more, but we're missing our friends and we're missing our family. And I have a grandchild who was going through kind of a tough time right now, and I would love to see him and be able to talk to him, but I can't be with him. I can't be with my grandchildren and my children and my friends, and I long to. And this says until we meet again, and that's what I'm thinking now. Until we meet again, I'm looking forward to that time, and that's why I wrote this.
Isn't that beautiful? It makes me kind of teary. What a wonderful thing. And that's true. It's so important that, I say that at the end of every one of these segments. Love one another, take care of one another, and we'll see you again really soon, right? Because we will. But that's what a beautiful gift of music. And Jake and I are just so thankful to be able to sing this for you and for all of our friends out there. So, would you join me in the final prayer with our children?
Yes.
May the Lord watch. Would you say that?
May the Lord watch
between me and thee.
Between me and thee.
While we are absent.
While we're absent.
One from the other.
One from the other.
And Grandma Sandra, thank you so much for doing this interview with me today. I know all of you out there are just digging, getting to see us and be with us in our beautiful little living room here. And I hope that you will enjoy this beautiful composition by Martinsville's own Sandra Ford. May the road rise to meet you. Sandra, thank you so much for that beautiful blessing, this beautiful new hymn for us and especially for your grandson. And folks, this week, may the road rise to meet you and may we all continue to count our blessings. And as we say every week, remember to love one another.
Take care of one another.
And we'll see you again real soon.